Welcome to another Mud and Blood actual review. This month we're looking at Coriolis, a sci-fi game by the Swedish publisher Fria Ligan. Coriolis is billed as Arabian Nights in space, and it fits that bill pretty well. Before I get into this visual review, I should just point out that we're only going to be looking at, as the name would suggest, the visuals, art, maps, layout, that sort of thing. If you want to see a full review of this game, head over to our podcast, our audio podcast, and we've done a full 2 hour plus review of this game. A link for that is mbcast.co/18, or you can look down in the description below for a link. Okay, so let's start by looking at the cover. This is a Kickstarter exclusive version of it, so this is no longer on sale, but the dimensions and a lot of the properties are the same. So if we look at the size, it's 8.5 by 11 inches if you're in North America, or if you're anywhere else in the world, it's 21 by 28 centimeters. So US letter format, it follows the format of all the other Fria Ligan games. The standard edition matches this one in terms of having a matte cover like this one has. It has an oversewn binding like this one does here. There's no ribbon in either of the editions. Yeah, and this one's got some embossing on it, but the standard edition doesn't have that. So quite similar in terms of format. In fact, the entire contents of the book are identical. So let's move on from the cover because there's not a lot else to talk about here with my edition, as it's no longer on sale. The first thing to talk about then on the inside are the end papers. You've got a map of the Third Horizon here, 36 systems that make it up, and that's really useful for reference. You can just flick to the front and there it is. And on the back, the most iconic location in the setting is the space station of Coriolis. It lends its name to the actual game, and here's a profile of it with the various different levels and a cutaway deck plan for the ring and the core. So again, those are both quite useful to have. There's a lot of intrigue and stuff that goes on in the station itself. The next thing I want to look at is layout, and just going to kind of open it to a standard, like a kind of random page here. Layout-wise, you've got most of the bulk of the text in a two-column format, with a kind of bluish, and in fact halfway through it goes to a slightly greenish. So first half of the book, it's kind of bluish, which is the rules, and the setting information, it's a slightly greenish hue. You have all call-out boxes that are either in a kind of brown motif here, or they're directly over the dark background being actually a star field with a little bit of a nebula in the middle here. They also have put some kind of section call-out boxes also using this motif on the side, which looks nice. There's page dressing on every page, which looks like you can see here at the top and bottom, a kind of Arabic or Persian themed motif running through the book. And generally, I think it looks really nice. Artwork is littered throughout the book. It's of very, very high quality. The primary artist on this is credited in the book as Martin Bergstrom, but he's also known as Martin Grip of Symbaroum fame. So if you notice some of the styling in here, it looks very similar to Symbaroum. That's because it's the same artist. Obviously, this is sci-fi themed, while Symbaroum is fantasy themed. So that's really all I want to talk about with layout. The next thing to look at is basically the art. And the best place to look at this is the 15 chapters. Each of these chapters has a double spread of kind of full art going through. There's additional art. We'll have a look at some of it through the book, but mainly I wanted to focus on the chapter sections because they're really gorgeous pieces. So chapter 1 shows Coriolis in orbit around Kua. Chapter 2, some characters in a bazaar, or it looks like possibly, or in some building. And again, you get the theme, the kind of Arabic or Persian theme kind of comes through very strongly in terms of everything they're wearing and the architecture, etc. Chapter 3, skills. Chapter 4, talents. This kind of gives a really good feel for the intrigue, which is kind of a central theme to games and using Coriolis. Combat. This is a grim and dark game, so combat is very deadly. Weapons and equipment. This is probably one of my favorite pieces of art in the entire book. Okay, then we've got spaceships and star travel. Setting section of the book now, the Third Horizon. Factions. The people of the horizon. Coriolis. Kua being one of the systems, actually the main system of the game, right in the center of everything. Atlas of the Third Horizon. Beasts and Jinni, or Jinai, however you would pronounce that. And the last chapter is Campaign. And as you can, this is probably just a good one to focus on. The style generally is a bit more abstracted. Again, if you're familiar with Symbaroum, you'll be right at home here. Very evocative, and generally I really like it a lot. There's a few other, we'll talk about maps in a second, but I'm just going to try and find a few more pieces here. You got some nice double page spreads here, although it's not taking up the full height of the page. And just generally, there's a lot of artwork throughout the book. I'd say probably I don't know how many pieces, but I would say nearly every double spread has a piece of artwork on it. Yeah, maybe not in the rules section. Yeah, there's still quite a bit. Yeah, I think I'm going to stop flicking. You can kind of get a really good idea on how this looks artistically, visually, just by doing this kind of quick flick through. Here's a section I'll probably quickly talk about. There are 13 concepts in this game, concepts being kind of like careers or classes. Each of them has a double spread here with an image on the left, a little blurb about the concept, and the rules for how to create them. And I'll just quickly show each of these to you. The artist, the data spider, fugitive, negotiator, operative, pilot, preacher, scientist, ship worker, soldier, and trailblazer. Those are the 13. So again, I just really like that they have an actual image to go with every single one of these concepts. And the last thing I want to talk about is in the equipment section. There's a really nice kind of almost double page spread of clothing. And again, I find that this really helps get into the feel of the setting. The clothing that's used in the game is all based on Arabic and Persian or Middle Eastern dress. And in fact, they haven't renamed anything. They're actually using names of real articles of clothing that exist in our own world. So you've got things like a jalaba, a dupatta, a kaftan, a kameez, etc. And I just really like that they've provided these kind of 8 characters that are actually wearing them in a little bit more detail than perhaps in the rest of the book. So again, it's just a kind of visual that helps you get immersed into the setting a little bit more. Okay, the last thing I kind of want to talk about visually are the maps, or in fact the extras in general. So although they're not maps, I want to start at the back of the book here because there are 4 sample ships, so you can create ships, any kind of ship you imagine, you can create your own. But they've given you 4 sample ships in the spaceship chapter of the book. And for each of them, they've given you a deck plan on a double page spread. So this first one here is a light freighter called the Scarab. It's up at the top here. And there are 4 levels to it, as you can see. And yeah, 4 levels for this next one, which is an attack ship. 4 levels on this courier ship. And this one has 6 levels. It's a bigger ship. It's a salvage ship, a larger class. They also give you a sample space station that you can use, although obviously Coriolis is quite iconic. You could use this for any space station. There's a named one called Azandra, but you could kind of use these deck plans for anything. Ship combat is very much abstracted, and rather than using trying to detail out with 3D maps and stuff, your position is just relative to the other ship obviously in space on a 3D, on 3 axes. But just to simplify things, they're just kind of going for distance from each ship. And so they've just created a 2-dimensional band. And as your ship's moving further and closer to each other, they just kind of change the bands that they're in. So it's quite a simple way of kind of abstracting space combat, and in my opinion, it works really well. It's still quite a crunchy mini game in and of itself, but it's not too hard to visualize, unlike some other games. Okay, one more map before I get into the character sheets, etc. I'm just going to show you. It is, I think, available for sale. There's the full map, which looks like this. It doesn't quite fit on. In fact, let me just zoom out very slightly, and then we can get the whole thing in here. There we go. I think you can buy this through either Modifius or the Fria Ligan website. This map is really great because it not only gives you the 36 systems like them, the front end papers, it also gives you a little image of the 6 main systems that are detailed in the book. And for each of the 36 systems that are detailed here, you get a little bit of information about it at glance. And this is super useful to a GM planning a campaign, because one of the biggest things, if you can read it here, in fact, let me just zoom in a bit. For each system, there are 3 bullets given for what that system is known for. Now, these are not necessarily, in fact, the vast majority of these are not detailed within the book. So they are just like little mini story hooks that you can develop to do whatever you like with. And that, as a GM, that's a really powerful tool that I really, really like. So yeah, this is really useful to have. And on the flip side is another bigger map of Coriolis, upside down, of course. It's too easy for me to get it right first time round. And similarly, rather than just having the deck plans and stuff, it's got images for the different plazas and the things like the cellar, the bits that are called off like on the profile. And it also has a lot more detail on the named of the kind of numbered locations in both the ring and the core. So again, really super useful to have if you're running anything on the station itself. Okay. Let's look at the extras, character sheets, that sort of thing. Tables we didn't really talk about. Here's a table here. Yeah, basically the tables have horizontal lines. There's no vertical lines, and I quite like that. It's probably my preferred way of viewing tables. Just a little minor thing. May not be that big of a deal to you. It does have a 5-page index, which is good to have. Okay, so let's look at the character sheets. If you've played any of the previous Fria Ligan games, like Mutant Year Zero, or if you've got experience with Forbidden Lands, this should look fairly standard to you. It's a 1-page character sheet. You've got your attributes, your skills, traumas handled here in this game, weapons at the bottom, gear on the side, armor, talents. Little bugbear of mine with the Fria Ligan games. They don't give you enough space for talents, but you can always write on the back of a page. Relationships and all the kind of little bits to do with your character here, appearance and your concept and that sort of thing. Yeah, pretty functional, works really well. These are all, by the way, freely available on the internet to download and print off as many as you need. Spaceship Sheet kind of matches the aesthetic of the character sheet, so I don't want to spend too long talking about that. It's also a 1-page thing. It's got all the information you need for your ship on 1 page. And then there are a few other sheets to talk around in the Atlas Compendium. So here's the Atlas Compendium. We consider this a must-have supplement to complement the core rulebook because of a bunch of tables in the back. We talk about those again in the full review. But they also include some freely available extra sheets as well. This one is for missions. You can generate missions in this book. It's just a handy way of keeping track of 4 different types of missions. Here's an NPC sheet. So you've got you can have 3 NPCs on one page. Also really handy. I like that the trauma, the hit points, and the stress points are boxes that you can fill in. Very useful to have. And finally, a system sheet. And again, this book has details for how to create your own systems, or how to create the details within the systems the 36 systems that exist. And you can put 4 planets on 1 page for 1 system, although some systems will have more than that. And that is Coriolis in a nutshell. So if you'd like to hear more about our review, then head down to the link in the description and give that a listen. Our podcast does, again, a 2+ hour review of this game. We highly recommend it. It's very good. But yeah, this is our visual review finished. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next month when we do our next book.